thank you, Kobe, for presenting me. It's an honor for me to be in this meetup. So with the help of God, let's start. So today we're going to talk about red team and supply chain. So as Kobe presented me, my name is Uriel Kosaev, the founder of Malware Analysis Co., a website which provides the community with malware analysis and research resources. Also the author of the Antivirus Bypass Techniques book, which presents how to research and find detections, flaws and vulnerabilities in antivirus and EDRs, and of course, how to improve the controls and the security controls of antivirus and EDRs. Also the red team tech leader in a company named AB InBev, which is the largest beer company in the world, basically. And yeah, so this is basically about me. So basically the three guiding things that I want to start with the presentation, also to end the presentation, is first of all, ask the hard questions, rating your supply chain in order and to understand your supply chain. So basically, Jonathan and others already talked greatly about supply chain and what it is and how it can be leveraged by attackers. I will present it from the red team perspective, how we can, as a red teamers, understand the threat or the threat level on a business or on the company, and how we can actually simulate threat actors that actually matches the threats to this specific business and related to the supply chain. So first of all, before going to supply chain attacks, and also I have a very simple and straightforward demo to present, what is red teaming all about? Because it's like a lot of buzz around it and a lot of stuff. So first of all, red teaming is not about achieving a DA or a domain admin. Okay, so like a lot of people think, yeah, you know, you have red team, it's an unconstrained penetration test, you can call it. And basically the target or the goal is to achieve a domain admin. So this is not the case. Red teaming is actually about simulating real world threats. Okay, so what the heck is real world threat? Let's explain. So red team's purpose is to provide real world picture of business related threats. Basically, you want to present the business or the organization. Here you go. This is the threats you're facing. This is the problems you can have. And this is the things or the scenarios that we need to simulate in order to evaluate the risks that you have as a business. And of course, to do it practically. Red team act like the adversary based on accurate threat intelligence. And this is one of the things that I want to elaborate here. A real red team is based on great reconnaissance and great threat intelligence. So we'll talk about it more in the next slides. Red teams simulate potential threat actors and TTPs. Basically, we as red teamers need to know and to understand what kind of tactics, techniques, and procedures, or TTPs, are relevant to simulate on our business. For example, if I'm a big company which has a lot of resources and cloud and use of office-related products, for example, maybe the best for me is to simulate group like Lapsus, okay, which is kind of funny. A lot of guys like laughing at them. They're just a bunch of 16 years old. They're doing a bunch of stuff, but as a reminder, they actually hacked Microsoft and Okta and other big companies just with simple stuff like finding passwords, buying passwords, or using an insider threat to buy from him some kind of access, whether through a remote access utility or through the password it has to its Azure instance or whatever. Red team's purpose is to help the organization grow its security posture and not like, you know, mock the blue team or say, you're not great as you need to be, or you need to be a better incident response. But we as a red teamers have the, you know, the goal and the responsibility to make organization better at their security and also help other teams to become better in detecting us and eventually detecting the bad guys. So let's like understand the base, okay, the essence of red team. It's called alternative thinking, okay? So what's alternative thinking? So alternative thinking, or actually red teaming, is the capability or the way of thinking which will help you to solve complex problems in the cybersecurity world. Red team thinking will help you to determine business technology problems and will help you to provide possible alternatives and applicable security solutions. So this is what the reason I'm using the scholars, because as a red team, I take and like simulating a specific threat actor, finding problems, and then I'm providing all of this data and all the stuff that we learned about the security on the organization and help the blue team to be better, basically. Okay, we'll not talk about how to do it because it's a, it's a thing of its own, but let's continue. Okay, so where can red teams and alternative thinking help? So the way we can help as red teamers is challenging the way things are working on the organization. Not like, okay, so we have this kind of security protocol, or we using DNSSEC on our DNS servers, or do we use the best EDR solution out there? There is not such thing, of course. There is no best EDR because everyone has its own vulnerabilities and problems. But rather ask, what is the culture of the organization? Okay, so one of the biggest problems of organization today is like the security awareness of employees, because you can go like find a password, for example, to an employee or whatever, in whatever way, and you can try to log in. And here you go, you have MFA, multi-factor authentication. But there were a lot of times from my experience where I just bombarded this guy or this person with a lot of MFA requests, and eventually he accepted. And here we are inside. And from there, it's a win, mostly. So it's not only about the technology, it's about the way of how people are thinking and how they operate in their daily basis. Also, as a red teamers, we're mapping the ways that adversaries, like the black hats, the real bad guys, can get initial access to organization. So this point explains, like, we need to understand which of our assets are exposed to the public, exposed to the outside world. We need to map them, and after we map them, understand the risk they impose on our organization. And of course, helping to mitigate them with the relevant teams, like go and literally sit with the blue teams or do a purple team or whatever name or color you want to use, and explain them the problem and literally try to put yourself in their own shoes. Like try to think as a defender for once. And for the defender, I would say the opposite. Try to think as an attacker, because a great attacker is one that understands the defender side, and the opposite is true. Helping IT and blue teams to get better by educating them, not only how to implement technologies and process better, but also giving them the ways of alternative thinking to challenge themselves, like literally give them the way of thinking, how to think alternatively, how to seek for the truth, how to ask the hard questions. And I call it actually a context switch thinking. For example, when I want to bypass EDR, I'm thinking, okay, I want to execute a reverse shell, or I want to do an LSAS dump or NTDS dump. How can I bypass the EDR? So I'm starting to test it, do lead gathering, understand what kind of processes, threads, yada, yada. And eventually I go and, okay, I try to understand, if I were a detection engineer or a defender, how would I detect it? And after that, I switch my thinking into how to bypass this same detection. And it goes on and on. And of course, the fact that we need to help the blue teams doesn't make us better than them, okay? But gives us more responsibility. So required skills for red teams. If you want to join us, you can join us. A, B, and D. First of all, creative and out of the box thinking. Think like a psychopath. Think like a person that wants to gain the money. Think like an APT group that want to wreak havoc on a company. Think like an adversary that tries to like do an espionage attack. Think differently. Think like a psychopath. Collaborative and team player mindset. This is the second thing that you need to have, because it's actually a red team, not a red person that goes and gets a domain admin, but an actually red team. So you need to be a team player. Good IT and networking knowledge, also a basic thing. Today, a lot of times people try to go and I want to do cyber and cyber and cyber, but you have the basics, you have the the fundamentals, you know how a protocol works, you know how specific things and works in the operating system, how computers are communicating with each other. Of course, each understanding has its own level of understanding, and it goes much and much deeper. Secure architecture, planning, and analysis. If someone has this, this ability or this, experience, it can be amazing because it can help blue teams to plan better their security. Oh, this is one of my favorite points: malware research and coding skills. And you say, what the hell? Why a red team will need a malware research and coding skills? Yeah, you take Cobalt Strut or Metasploit or all of this, all of the off-the-shelf tools, and you type some comments or use some fancy GUI, and boom, you're a red teamer. Bullshit. It's not a red teamer. A great red teamer knows how to think outside the box and also to provide and understand technical deep aspects. Okay, and this is one of the things I want to say. You don't need to actually do malware analysis as a red teamer, but if you have this ability in the team, not all of the team members need to know how to do malware research, but if you know how to do malware research, you can learn, for example, about malware of, for example, Conti, the ransomware of Conti, and you can re-implement it in your own simulations on your own networks. And in that way, you can understand how much do you prepare against Conti. And of course, coding skills for automation and stuff like this. Report writing and presentation skills, don't need to explain it. Understanding of adversaries and their TTPs, like literally go to Attack Monitor and start to play with things. Okay, so red teams and synergy with other teams. So red team is not like it's not it's need to be a symbiotic team which helps each other. And for example, you have one guy that's good in malware analysis and coding, one guy that is an actual operator that knows how to do stuff. And it's like a symbiotic, they teach each other. Okay, so synergy with other teams. So a real adversary simulation, not this mumbo jumbo cyber stuff like we are doing red teams, but it's actually a penetration test. Okay, there is a huge difference between penetration test and red. The combination of a red team and a threat intelligence equals to an adversary simulation, to an actual adversary simulation, because you need the threat intelligence, you need the information. For example, I'm as a threat intelligence, I want to go and understand what sector my business is working, what kind of threats and threat actors are targeting my business. And afterwards, I will take all of this information and provide the red team. Hey, red team, what's up? Yeah, how are you doing? These are the actors that you need to simulate because they are targeting or potentially can target our company. So go and simulate this. In this way, in that way, of course, it for the red team's decision on which tools and which techniques to use, everything else. Okay, so you finish with your adversary simulation, blah, 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 with your red team, and you get this fancy report, this fat wow report. We did that, we did this, blah, blah, blah. And okay, so what do you do with it? What do you do? So you go and cooperate with the teams. Okay, of course, it can take a lot of time, a lot of resources, and not all of organizations prepare to such cooperations or a way of working. I don't know. But if you take adversary simulation team or red team and sit with a blue team, you get what's called purple team, or I should call it better security and monitoring. Okay, for example, I found that I can bypass an EDR. I don't know, I can do MTDS NAM for the domain controller. Okay, so what? How I can detect it? Okay, maybe let's try and sit and write a detection logic for it. If you have an MTDS exit, for example, process running from CMD or PowerShell, boom, something not right. Or so this is from the detection perspective. Now I'm switching to a red teamer. Now I say, okay, if you're detecting this as from a CMD or from PowerShell, so how can I bypass it? So I can execute NTDS not from a CMD or from a PowerShell. I can detach it from its parent. Okay, I have a lot of ideas. I can go for hours on it. And how can I do detection for it, for this bypass? And goes on and on. And it's only about EDRs, but you have mail gateways and firewalls and a lot of other stuff. Okay, so, and of course, you need to have fun, because if you want to do something good, you need to do it with fun, with passion, and that's it basically. So where do we meet like red team and SDLC? Okay, so secure software development lifecycle. I think Jonathan and others are already spoken about it, so don't need to go through too much details. But for example, I found a bug in some I don't know, automation runbook which like executes some PowerShell command on Azure, or I found some code repository, you know, with which is exposed to the public, and I found, as a red teamer, I found it. So you can go to the developers. Hey, my man, how are you? Can you please close it and make it private? Yeah. Okay, maybe we found another vulnerability. Okay, so you know, I exploited some CSRF or SQL injection or whatever, or some remote code execution. So can we actually close it? Okay, can we operate with the application security team, with the AppSec team? Yeah, of course, why not? How we can not only prevent this attack or you know, fix the vulnerability, but how we can also monitor it with the blue team. How you can monitor for access logs, you know, for code changes and pipelines like Jenkins and stuff like this. How we can do it? So the red team will provide the posture, the current position, or the current security posture, and afterwards, you go test it, automate it, fix stuff, and of course, monitor stuff. This is where red team can help. Okay, so basically, we got here to basically we're here in a supply chain meetup. So we need to kind of understand how red team like related to supply chain. So again, great presentation by Jonathan. He already presented some stuff that can be somehow related. For example, if I'm, as an attacker, find some supply chain like a pipey or some, you know, repository or package management system, I can infect packages, I can masquerade them, I can change them, I can upload new packages and make the users of those packages to be infected. But this is one case. I want to talk about a different scenario. I want to talk about SolarWinds, actually. SolarWinds, all right, but from a different approach. Okay, so I'll do a quick recap of what is SolarWinds, Orion, and what actually happened, or what supposedly happened, because nobody actually knows what happened for sure yet. So basically, let's talk about, first of all, like, from the red team perspective, let's first of all talk about how we can actually attack from like external assets, and then we'll talk about SolarWinds. So basically, when you do a red team, you can start and do recon on basically developers, QA, DevOps. You can try to guess their passwords. Okay, so for example, I found a GitLab instance or a GitHub. Now I can try to target developers, QA, DevOps, or whatever. Maybe I can try to download a public GitHub repository or Bitbucket, for example, and do Git leaks search to find some secrets or passwords or whatever, and pipeline products, of course. So after I did my reconnaissance, I go into the credential access. Okay, so basically I can go to publicly exposed credentials, phishing attacks on those developers or DevOps engineers. After I'm inside the computer, I can try and steal the cookies or do some session stealing and access the Git repo of the specific developer. For example, I know that from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. He works on his GitHub. I can, you know, go hack to his computer somehow, of course, and steal its cookies. But yeah, you have MFA. MFA will protect you. No, MFA will not protect you, because if you have the cookie and you literally dumped it from the memory and inject it to your own attacker website, browser, excuse me, you can refresh the page And here you go. You bypass the MFA. You're inside now. Okay. So after we are inside a computer of a developer or some, I don't know, for example, a pipeline product or GitHub or something like this, we start with situational awareness. We try to understand what kind of permissions we have, what kind of controls, what do we have. And basically from there, we try to discover the code injection or commit entry point, basically. And from there, inject our payload, which is basically what happened in SolarWinds. So we will do it fast. So short story recap, we have SolarWinds Orion, which is basically implemented and deployed on a lot of organizations to monitor and do some IT management and some security stuff. The story is basically supply chain attack. Lots of SolarWinds clients were affected. More than 3,000 organizations, if not more, suspected nation-state hackers dubbed as Nobelium, Russian-based. The implemented backdoor is referred as Sunburst. And there is another web shell. I will not talk about it. And it is estimated that the attackers were inside for at least a year before detected. So they actually learned from where to inject their malicious payload. Where is the entry point? Okay, so we'll go through the facts. Basically, what the code did is to basically it executed under the business layer host DLL, which is the DLL, which is actually deployed on the SolarWinds Orion server in the client side after the code was injected to the GitHub repository from where the code was compiled and downloaded as an update for the affected or infected clients. Basically, then it goes and generates do some DGA, domain generation algorithms, do some random subdomain creation, and then it do some situational awareness, gets the basic information of the computer, the domain, the IP, and stuff like this, builds a configuration file, and sends it to the C2 frame to the C2 server. And if the C2 server likes the organization being attacked, it will go and download another payload, which is a different one. So we got to the demo point. Let me just share it here quickly. Switch my screens. Yeah, I think it's right. And go for this guy. Okay. Can you see the video?
Yes, we can see it.
Amazing. So basically, we can see here, we loaded the DLL file, the legitimate DLL file with inserted or injected malicious code we basically decompiled it using a .NET decompiler named dnspy. Okay, it's like an IDA Pro for .NET, basically, .NET C#, stuff like this. We go into the DLL itself, and basically, now I'm going to go through the functions that the malicious function actually starts, the entry point of the malicious function. It's under basically Orion improvement business layer, blah, blah, blah. It's a method, which under this method, you have this function called initialize. The initialize function will go, and by this hash, as you can see here, it's an FNV blah, blah hash, which will be compared to the owner or parent process of SolarWinds, Orion, and it basically checks that it actually executes from the original SolarWinds process and not under a malware sandbox or something like this, okay? After this, it will check how much time it is actually executed, between 12 and 14 days, I think. Then it will go and check whether there were an already execution, like kind of like creating a mutex, but it will read the report status of the config file it builds for the C2 server. And here, of course, if all of those functions are basically false, so it goes for the update function, and the update function will track for processes. It will check whether you have some security product, antivirus, EDR, some malware analysis tools and stuff like this. Of course, I'm doing it very straightforward. It's a very interesting code. It gets the address family, whether it's IPv4, IPv6. It takes all the interface information. Writes, of course, the report or the config file will be sent to the C2. And of course, it will go and check other stuff like the domain name of the compromised SolarWinds server. It will check other stuff based on a base 64 encoding. Basically, it will check processes and other services installed on your computer. And the last thing, basically, I will now show you where is the actually entry point caller, which they actually understood, because they analyzed a lot of, they analyzed this code, and they needed to decide where is the actual entry point that I need in order for the initialized malicious function to always be executed while the malicious code is deployed on the client side. Okay, so if I do a backtrace functions here, I go do some backtrace, basically, and you can see that the start function calls the refresh, which calls the refresh interval, and goes on. So basically, this is the execution function kill chain that goes on and on till it gets and calls the actual malicious function. So it's, I can say it's genius, basically. Let me just share again the screen of the presentation right quickly. So some last few words, what we can do about it. Okay, so we can do proactive code security analysis, manual, automated code analysis, while do commits, push, and stuff like this. Another manual and automated review before client updates release. And in the rating style, search for publicly exposed repos and assets of third parties, if possible, of course, and if it's like, fine by the companies who are doing this for them. So again, ask the hard questions, rating your supply chain, understand your supply chain. Great. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, Riel. Maybe we can spare a couple of minutes to the questions. You can open the Q&A chat and try to answer, Riel.
Yeah, of course. TPS, which programming language can help cybersecurity? So which programming language can be help with cybersecurity? It very depends. You can use Python to automate high-level stuff, or even write malware or security detections. But EDRs, for example, they use C++, of course, because they need low-level language will give them the controls and the ability to access the memory and CPU in more level way fashion. So it very depends. I will say if it's endpoint, it will be C++, it will be more high level, it will be stuff like, Python, Node.js, stuff like this. Thank you, highly. Thanks for the great, we'll love to hear your opinion about red teaming and TTPs in OT environment. Oh, amazing question. Basically, yeah, you need to be very careful in OT environments, but you need to do it because you have one example, you have the Iranians, which actually they literally access to our water implants in Israel, which is a shame. It was a human error or whatever, I don't know. Yeah, so do it if you can, and be very careful. Yeah, this is basically the questions. If you have any questions, I will be more than glad to answer.